I wanted to talk about being gaslit in the fitness industry because this is something that's really important and I don't think is tied together in the realms of the fitness space, which is a lot about discipline. And then in the inner child or energy working space, which has a lot to do with our nervous system regulation. And so this is really so helpful for you if you have in your head a lot of negative self-talk that shames you and judges you if you're not being able to stick with whatever it is that you think you're supposed to be sticking with. So like for instance, 2 years ago, I was working out at the gym 6 days a week. I had a training partner and we had a 5-day split, which meant that every single week on the 6th workout, it was a duplicate of the first. And that just is how it played out. Now I work out 3 days a week with my mom to where we have a very specific upper body, lower body, and then an upper body day again. So we're getting the front of the upper body, we do the lower body, and then we get the back of the lower body, of the upper body. And the reason why we do that is because we're working out together and we have this protocol so that every single week we get all of the muscles worked out. And then I occasionally go into the gym on Saturdays and Sundays, partially because I'm bored, partially because I want to hit my shoulders and my glutes more to create the aesthetic that I'm after. Now I'm sharing this with you of like why there are variables, because you may have watched women on Instagram, even myself, working out 6 days a week, and then you feel bad because you don't. And then you go into a shame spiral, and then that prevents you from going to the gym because then maybe you get so far in your head and you don't want to show up because you're afraid that people are going to notice that you haven't been there and you're inconsistent and therefore you're not disciplined and therefore you're not good enough. And those spirals are things that happened within our mindset because of the dysregulated nervous system. And now I know this might feel like a lot to take in when all you want to do is lose 10 pounds and you want to be consistent with your workouts. But I'm telling you, if you take the time to actually get into your nervous system and kind of like set your adult mind off to the side a little bit and really allow yourself to get in touch with some of the reasons why you have this judgment and shame around being inconsistent, then you're going to have like the body of a lifetime. You're going to be able to you're going to be able to figure out the correct lifestyle for you so that you can be consistent long term so that your body ages like a fine wine. That's really the goal, because there's so many times where women, we think we're supposed to be doing these very regimented things with our body. And the truth of it is that the fitness space was largely documented and experimented on, and not in a bad way, but like experimented on to see what these protocols do on college age healthy men. And this is something that the strength training niche of the fitness space with women was a really prevalent discussion, and a lot of like sacred rage came up, a lot of anger came up, because a lot of the protocols that we have been putting ourselves through don't actually work for the female hormone system. And so I'm sharing this with you because if you're trying to follow the way men work out or the way the fitness industry tells you that you should be working out really hard all the time, the studies that back that aren't necessarily done on the female body. So then long term, what ends up happening is women get into perimenopause, so before menopause, they get into menopause, and then post-menopause, and because they've been running their bodies into the ground for so many years when they were having their menses, then it's like their hormones completely tank. They gain a ton of weight because what happens is we are actually more sensitive hormonally to cortisol, to stress. And so what that does is it actually takes us out of the feel-good hormones of endorphins that are the reason why we are told apply some stress to your body, work out hard, make the sweat, get the circulation going, you feel better after. That's true. But we have a different threshold for our body to where we stop being in the endorphin, runner's high type of state, and we actually just start to produce cortisol. And so that's also part of the reason why we start to carry some weight around our midsection as we get older. Now, there are the caveat conversation that we start to store estrogen in our lower belly versus inside of our reproductive organs when we're postmenopausal. That is true. So don't freak out that if you are going to get a little bit of a pooch the older you get. But what I'm talking about is that rapid weight gain that so many women talk about. And I'm sharing this with you so that you have a little bit of a biological reason of why you want to listen to what I'm saying, to slow down and get into your body so that you can stop the shame cycles that are ruining your consistency and are really being so mean to you when you're not consistent. Okay, so I just wanted to share with you the long term of what happens in our female body hormonally. So back to why you want to do this now. So number one, we've covered that you want to age like a fine wine, and that the fitness industry, a lot of the studies for the protocols are based on college age healthy men. And not that they're bad or they're wrong. Don't get it twisted with my goddess stuff that I like to post about. But the point is that this information is kind of old. And if you are with any type of a coach that has trained with someone who is in the education field, and is also still in the trenches, still working with people on a consistent basis, it's those trainers that then teach people like me of hey, these studies are in the fitness space, but it takes years for the real work that is done in real time, noticing the nuances of differences, especially for women, to then make it back to a certification book, to then get told to a new coach, to then be put into protocol. And so, so that's your long-term effect with your hormones as a woman. And what I want to share with you right now specifically that goes into what your goals are for your aesthetics right now, and how not getting into your body and actually assessing why you have the judgment when you're not consistent. Because if you assess it now, and you bring your nervous system up to speed with your desires, then you will start to get the results that you're after now, and you won't tear your body down for when you are postmenopausal. So let's talk about this, okay? So your nervous system is the regulator of your entire body. All systems revolve around your nervous system. And we talk about the nervous system as having a ladder. That we have the dorsal state, which is at the lowest end, and this is on the primal level, roll over and play dead, so that you don't get eaten. Because a lot of predator animals don't like to eat dead things, unless it's a vulture, right? But roll over and play dead is actually the way the nervous system is going to respond to keep you alive if you were about to get eaten. The next rung up the ladder is the sympathetic nervous system, where we go into fight or flight. And what's really amazing about your body and the nervous system is that this motion right here, the shape of your skull and the shape of your shoulder blades, makes it so that nothing can sever your neck. And so this is why the fight, flight, physiologically, the shoulders go up and we get the tension headaches. Because what's supposed to happen in fight, flight of the nervous system is protect your spine and punch and run. But then we have the ventral state of the nervous system. And the ventral state of the nervous system is where you are calm and you can think rationally. You're not really stimulated. It's also a little bit boring, which is hard when you want to feel stimulus of emotion, because then we boredom eat, because eating the food makes us feel good in these brain chemicals. So let's talk about how these stages of the nervous system show up in your habits. Well, if you get triggered, if something really stressful happens in your life and you have had similar, not the similar situation, right? Because it's all contextual with how old you are. But if you've had experiences when you were very young where there was something really scary, perhaps even something life or death, and you didn't get any processing out of it, then what happens is when there is stimulus, your nervous system, when there's stimulus that feels scary to your nervous system, like stress, if somebody looks at you the wrong way, if you get into an argument with someone, if you feel a disconnection from someone, that's enough for your nervous system to get activated because it's like, oh my God, what's going to happen? Because whenever we feel a stress to where there's a big contrast to the nervous system, it actually means that we're going to die. Because on that primal level, connection means safety, because it's very tribal. Our nervous system is very tribal, to where if you think about, if you were out in the wilderness and you didn't have your tribe, you would succumb to the elements. So the nervous system is very smart to keep you alive. But how it's showing up for us now is behaviorally. So when you enter stimulus that is really overwhelming and your body drops down into the dorsal state, it's not roll over and play dead. It is total collapse, to where like that feeling where you just like can't get yourself moving. You feel really stuck. You feel this like kind of sick overwhelm in your body, but it's like you can't put words to it and you can't move forward. You're just kind of get numbed out, like you totally check out. That's the dorsal roll over and play dead. It also, with the dorsal of when you get really triggered, is people pleasing. Because if we're not tribal right now, and it's not necessarily separation means physical death, the separation actually means emotional death. So the dorsal will also show up in people pleasing. And how that shows up in your habits is that you stop choosing yourself. Maybe something happens to where you see someone who has the body that you really like, and then maybe you see comments on Instagram where people say she's selfish, or she's egotistical, or she must be like a real, pain in the ass because she's so regimented. Whatever it is, like, you will see those comments and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to be like that. I don't want anybody to ever view me like that. So then you go into people pleasing, and then you don't follow through on what you need to do. When we get into a sympathetic response, to where we go into fight or flight, because this is internal, this ends up being the internal fight flight is that you do it to you. And so you may create the fight through a binge eating episode. And how that works is because in the binge, you have self-talk going on. You might numb out and be totally blank when you're emotionally eating, but a lot of times when we go into a full binge, we're actually having a push and pull dynamic within our conversation of, I shouldn't be eating this, but I really want to eat this, and I'm going to eat it, and I feel really bad for eating it. And we're eating and judging ourselves at the same time. And then when we're getting towards the tail end of the binge or the aftermath of it, we are really critical to ourselves. And then we create all these promises of how we're not going to do it again. And that is an abusive cycle that we learn behaviorally. And so the trigger might not send you into dorsal, to where you're just numb and you can't move and you can't identify anything and you literally don't do anything. Or it could be the binge, where you undo any of your progress. And most importantly, it's the conversation that you're having between your two ears that is the problem that we're really dealing with. And so what ends up happening is we're never really able to get into that ventral state in the nervous system. Because when we're living like this and we're so sensitive to triggers, then we can't be consistent. And then if we're not consistent, we know we're not going to get the results if we're not consistent. But what happens is, because we've had such heavy duty marketing that is true, you do have to be consistent. You do have to push yourself. You do have to break a sweat. You do have to get the blood circulating. You do have to stress your lungs a little bit so that the lungs actually force oxygen through your blood. Those are all true. But what is the problem with all of that is that it's not taking into consideration human conditioning, human development of how we interpret through our nervous system. Because in the perfect world, when we encounter stress, we're able to actually identify what this stress is and then rationally talk ourselves through it. So it's very similar to if you're a child and you see a shadow on the floor because your closet is a little bit open and the light from the street is casting a shadow on a purse that's hanging on the door handle of the closet door, and the shadow looks like a scary monster. If there's no adult, if like you're screaming and nobody comes in and turns the light on and then it goes away, and then the adult is like, wait, let me just show you what this is. That's a shadow. And because of the shape of the door and the angle of the light outside and how the purse was hanging, it made this shape. Doesn't that look like a monster? And then you're like, oh my God, yeah, it looks like a monster. Okay, so it's okay. So you know what we should do? Let's just close the door all the way. Let's take the purse off the handle. And then why don't we just keep your door open a little bit so that you can have a little bit of light from the hallway? Okay, yeah, that's great. That's perfect. And so if we don't have types of things like that, and not to say that it's a problem with our parents, but this is just an example that it's the feeling that we're having in our nervous system as an adult is similar to not understanding the shape of a shadow, that the mind creates that's a monster. And so if we're in that state that we have so much unsafety, that we have so much judgment and shame for ourselves, that every time we're not able to follow through, we harp on ourselves because of what we've been taught through the fitness industry, or we get triggered and then that causes us not to follow through. Either way that you're coming from the self-judgment aspect of it, it's like the thing that we really have to do is learn how the nervous system works. And so when you get into learning how the nervous system works, then you're really able to create a life around what your goal is and use creating your life as the healing process. And so that's what's really unique about the PHAT Life, because in the PHAT Life, we're doing work with macros and we're doing work with bodybuilding, and I'm taking you through correcting your whole body to where you're getting your shoulders and your hips into alignment, so then the energy can transfer through your spine, so then your body starts to feel really good. When your body starts to feel good and it stops holding tension, that helps you feel your emotions, because the tension in your body is covering energy. It's blocking energy, and emotions are energy. When we work with the macros, we're actually looking at how much time can I think ahead for myself. Because thinking ahead for your nutrition is like parenting yourself and making sure that you have meals and making sure that you have snacks. And so that process of putting attention onto yourself by thinking ahead makes it so that you find out why you might not have enough self-love to put yourself first, and why you are shaming and judging yourself for how you look or how you're not being consistent with your habits. And then once we have this lens of working with macros in this way, and once you have the lens of exercise to correct your body so that you relieve the tension, so that you can feel your emotions, then when you meet the resistance, when you meet the trigger, you actually have a better sensation of your body and you can stay grounded. Because the way that the ventral nervous system stage works, the ventral state of the nervous system is that you are calm and that you can actually have logic and reason in your decisions. And when you feel your body, when you sense something, you can tell if it's on or off, if it's for you, if it's not for you. And then you can actually have the time to assess it and validate it and be like, literally in the moments, what am I feeling? And identify the emotion and validate, well, given what you've gone through, given your human conditioning, your environment, it makes sense that you would feel this way. So you validate the emotion and then you start to process it. And the processing is being able to take into account, okay, I'm feeling this way. Technically in your nervous system is activated as the you who did not process whatever emotion is coming up right now, or is under the threat of your own judgment and shame in your present life right now. So you validating that to say, given what you've gone through, it makes sense you would feel this way. Then when you process, the processing is, okay, now that I know this is the version of me that's feeling this way and why, then when you assess what's actually going on in your life, you're like, oh, it makes sense. Because then you have the skill set to say, when this interaction happened with the person, when I felt stressed because of something I watched on the news, when I got stuck in traffic, whatever you make those things mean in the present day, that gives that nervous system judgment, or that reminds the nervous system of a threat that it has been in, then your nervous system can actually calm down. And then you're like, okay, it makes sense. And when you move forward from that processing and you integrate it by nurturing yourself, and you integrate it by taking care of yourself. So this can mean that you go on a walk. So maybe you put in some cardio and you're like, yeah, like, let me get this energy flowing. This is, wow, oh my gosh, I just went through an evolution of growth. I just had a cycle of growth because I got triggered in this way. I felt my nervous system. I validated. I brought my nervous system up to speed with my now moment. Now I am more wiser. Now I have another level up on my emotional capacity to handle stress. Whew, okay, amazing. What if the emotion was like required a little bit more oomph to it? Maybe that's when you go and you do your bodybuilding workout and you're like, I am going to ground this power. Because maybe what happened is you actually discovered ways that you shame yourself and judge yourself and relinquish your power. So then when you integrate this processed emotion that you just discovered and you put it into the strength training, now you're actually telling yourself, I'm super strong, I'm empowered, I'm self-sufficient. And then maybe what you actually need to integrate it is to have some soul food, God forbid. What if it is, wow, what would actually make me feel so good with food? And not in the way that you're going to go get a bunch of junk food, but if you really sat with yourself and you were like, what would be the food to eat right now? Like, what if it's a pollo loco because that, the seasoning that they have on their chicken and the crispy skin, you know, is going to taste really good and going to remind you of something. Maybe it reminds you of having a fun barbecue. What if it is a cupcake? What if you ate that cupcake with full emotional awareness of why you were doing it? Because maybe you were proving to yourself that no matter what you eat and no matter what the outcome is on your physical appearance because of what you eat, you're okay. You're still lovable. What if that's the integration? Because we're not doing any of this so that we're more restricted. Ever. No, we're doing this so that we build a relationship with our body, and our body requires food and exercise. And so that's what's really that's what's been my experience from coming from the full pain side of having to learn the identity work with the inner child primitive from Dr. John Sarno, who explains why we have physical problems in our body because of emotions. And he says, like, if you don't have an extra chromosome, if you don't have a missing gene, if you don't have broken or torn tissue, your pain is emotional. So that really opened my eyes. And when I started to really apply attachment theory and inner child work to my relationship with macros, then it was like I really had something to see. I really got to see my energy. So it was like, first I spent years and years and years to get out of chronic pain with changing my identity and changing the relationship with my body through exercise so that I could feel when I was triggered. Because what my pattern was is I didn't even know I was triggered. I didn't know I was upset about anything until I went into full dorsal in bed, either sick with a cold, sick with a migraine, or sick with the flare. And so the exercises that I have in the bodybuilding portion of the Fat Life is so that you can get into your body. We have timed exercises where you're laying on the floor doing certain things with your hips and your shoulders and your core so that you get present to your body. And that was huge for me when I realized that was my issue, that I wasn't present to my body. And so the malformations that I have with the scoliosis in my spine, with my collapsed arches, I ran myself into the ground instead of being able to feel the little nuances of things being out of alignment. And because I wanted to work so hard to prove my worth, because that's part of my inner child wounding, I ran my body into the ground, where if I had known about the nervous system and if I had been patient to actually do this inner work, I probably wouldn't have even had the neck injury. And then when the food issue stuff came up, I was like, if we have energy and we have personal power, then like, where is it? How do you actually correct your attachment trauma? How do you actually build a connection when connection is the thing that's so terrifying when you have physical or emotional separation from a parent? And I had physical and emotional separation from my dad. And then I had my mom who had a stalker. So I had a lot of stored stuff in my nervous system that really inhibited my ability to connect. And it's still something that I work on today, to really feel a connection with people and not second guess a lot of, how they feel about me, or if I'm good enough, if I'm showing up good enough in the relationship. So I really wanted to share this with you because it's really been so helpful for me to get healthy, and like feel confident in my body and not feel like, oh, like I'm not good enough because I don't do this or I don't do that. So I would really love that for you to have that. That's why I'm spending so much time on this. Okay, so the Fat Life, all right? So let me just close it out really quickly and let you know that the Fat Life, I'm doing a group container that starts on June 2nd, and you are gonna get so much attention and so much support because this is our first 3-month group container in the Fat Life, and I'm starting it at $111. And at $111, if you stay enrolled monthly, you can cancel at any time. I mean, like, it's 3-month container, but you literally have the control to cancel your membership even if you don't complete the 3 months. So I'm saying that because, not because I want to give you an out, like I want you to commit to yourself, but I don't want you to feel like, hey, like if this is too much or if this is not for you, that you feel like you're going to be throwing money away, especially now. So if you stay, though, you can stay at the $111 rate through all of 2025, through the rest of the year. And because this is so new, it's a small group. And so you're really going to have a lot of attention and support to really help you get through all this stuff. And that's really what I want for you. So the link is in my bio. You can go to laurensarcione.com and sign up.